Joker is still the leader of the Phantom Thieves and so must be in the party at all times, but unlike Persona 5 itself, his defeat is not a game over, and you can control characters besides him. However, he is the easiest to use and most versatile character, and ultimately the most powerful. Joker's basic attacks are fast and precise, while having his 4th and 5th hits as great crowd control options. His gun is long range and very accurate, making it excellent for initiating fights from a long way away without being spotted, which will be useful for certain quests later. For Joker's neutral special, smash memes are inevitable here. He just wields his gun. This doesn't seem too special at first, but as you unlock his master art, he'll be able to charge this attack at the cost of more ammo. But his real gimmick is the power of the wild card. As usual, Joker is the only character who can use and switch between multiple personas, giving him moves and elemental coverage for any situation. His wildcard ability is useful for 2 particular reasons in Strikers. The first is it gives him exclusive access to a lot of status ailments, and by extension, technical combos. Technical is one of the best ways to deal damage in this game, which is why Joker is the strongest party member by late game. But secondly is the free combo skills mechanic. Every character has access to weakened persona skills for free as part of their combos, but for Joker, every single one of his personas has its own unique free combo skills. And some even get free healing, buffs, charge, and concentrates. And all but the aerial persona attack can be used outside of combat. But that's not to say his starting persona Arsene isn't unique in its own right. He still focuses on curse skills, and with a certain someone indisposed, Joker's back to being the only party member with access to these. He also learns Tarunda, a sleep skill, and the new to Strikers and very useful Rebel Soul skill at level 10. But by this point, the designers realized that many people thought Arsene was cool enough to keep around all game, and if you do this in Strikers, you're rewarded by him learning much stronger skills at higher levels. But there's one problem with this. See those stats there? Those are Arsene's stats at level 99. So you can keep Arsene until endgame, but you'll really need to do something about those stats. You'll need certain features in the Velvet Room for this, and they won't unlock for a little while. But it is still nice seeing endgame Arsene being acknowledged. You'll definitely want to fuse other personas though, as that's where Joker will show his true power. Humanity's Companion is certainly right, as Sophia is both an excellent support character and a great choice for boss fights. She can be hard to play as though, especially if you're new to action or warriors games, as her gimmick rewards carefully timing your button presses as opposed to mashing. If you can press the attack button again, just as Sophia is catching her yo-yo, you'll do a perfect catch, increasing the range and damage of her attacks for a short time. Her neutral special simply puts her into this state at will. Something that's a little less clear is that if you execute her free persona skill combos with perfect timing, they actually upgrade to Marakunda and Makoha. Her yo-yos cover a wide area with long combos that pull enemies in and get them stuck for a while. Her gun fires a wide laser that can strike a lot of enemies at once, but is very short range. Stat-wise, she's a bless user with high agility and magic, but it's her skill set where she really shines, as she learns not only healing, but also defense debuffs. Like I said, this makes her an amazing choice in boss fights. as bosses in this game have a lot of health, so you want to keep their defense down at all times. She's also one of only 2 party members to learn revival skills naturally, but she doesn't get her first until long after the first dungeon will be over, which is a shame as you'll be really wishing she had this against the first major boss. She later learns Divine Grace to make her healing even better, and her Bless skills are backed not just by high magic, but by Bless Boost and Amp. Which is notable for her boss performance, as every Lockkeeper boss fight is weak to Bless. At higher levels, her skills evolve the way you'd expect them to: better Bless skills, better healing, and full revival. This is normally the part where I talk about Sophia's persona and its mythology, except we don't even know if this thing even is a persona right now, and as such, it's simply named after the Greek word for a jar or vessel. Some were used for ceremonial purposes, and others were used as mundane storage. It could represent the box that she was born from, or the idea of something that starts hollow and is only given meaning by what humans choose to place inside it. Which is actually very close to how AI works, needing to be loaded with a vast amount of human-provided training data before it can function on its own. As for Arcana, she doesn't have one. But none of that will stop her from being absolutely amazing, both in gameplay and as a character. Ryuji was never my favourite party member in the original P5, but that's all changed in Strikers. His tanky stat build is pretty great in an action setting, and Tarukaja is very much appreciated when bosses have so much health, and unlike in a turn-based game, it doesn't waste too much time to apply this to the whole party. Ryuji's basic attacks are very slow, don't have long combos, and don't have much AoE outside of the specials. But making up for that is his neutral special giving him an aura that makes him harder to flinch, meaning his attacks will go off almost all the time, and his special combos being chargeable. And when fully charged, which does take a while, there's about 3 levels of flashing, they become very impressive, especially his second special combo where he baseballs Captain Kidd zooming across the battlefield. Unlocking Ryuji's 3rd Master Art makes his charges a lot faster though. It's actually pretty integral to making him good. In addition, one thing that might not be obvious unless you look very closely at the in-game button prompts, you can charge Ryuji's gun too. This results in a widespread shotgun blast that can be decent for crowd control. Ryuji also benefits from his element, Zio, having a chance of shock, which opens up enemies to technical damage from physical attacks, and he still learns shock boost. Against massive hordes, you're likely to have at least something on screen shocked, and technical damage is very, very strong in Strikers. He also gets Rebel Soul, and later the incorrectly named Technical High. This has nothing to do with technicals, it's called Critical High in Japanese, and it extends the timer on buffs whenever Ryuji lands a critical hit. His agility is not the best, but he still tends to do this quite often. The rest of his skills are physical based and hit in pretty wide areas. And with the way HP consuming skills work in Strikers, he can use these quite a lot if you're playing well. He does learn Charge, but you're likely to be almost at the final boss by the time he gets that. Overall, Ryuji feels very much at home in an action game. Expect to see a lot of him. Morgana, now with slightly less controversy. He's still the primary healer and win user of the Phantom Thieves, but Morgana's brought a few new tricks. Morgana feels very small, light, and agile to control in an action setting, though I doubt he's any faster or has a smaller hitbox than anyone else. That's probably just a placebo effect. He does, however, have extremely high agility, meaning that he's got the highest chance of auto-evading attacks in the party, outside of Sophie once she learns Divine Grace, and it means his physical's critical decently often as well. Speaking of physicals, yep, the Mad Lads and Atlas actually gave Morgana a sleep-inflicting physical attack just to cave into the memes. But I feel it's more a meme than anything else. No, Morgana's real new asset in Strikers is Technical Adept. Looking at damage multipliers, it seems like this raises technical damage by 2/3, and this is significant because, okay, I've said before that technical damage is really good in Strikers, it's time I explained why. In Strikers, weakness and technical damage multipliers stack, which was not the case in base P5. This means if you have an enemy weak to wind, inflicting them with burn and then having Morgana use Garu is gonna cause insane damage. And let's just say the first boss that's a huge stumbling point, it's weak to both fire and wind. Morgana's neutral special is also very unique. It turns him into the Monomobile, letting him drive around in this state. It's not any faster than moving Morgana normally, but in combat, this will deal very small damage to any enemy it contacts, but also is great for clumping them together. And once you unlock Morgana's final master art, his Monomobile's jump attack, by pressing special while in this form, becomes wind elements. This is excellent for breaking through the shield gauges of anything weak to wind. At higher levels, he gets Masukunda, Wind Boost and Amp, though Amp comes very late, and maxes out all his healing. Salvation is notable though, because unlike in the rest of the Persona games, it not only fully heals the party, but also revives any fallen characters with full HP. It is very expensive, but this can still come in clutch. With how good healing items are in Strikers, you might not need his healing, but you will definitely need his wind power. And I cannot stress enough how good his technical damage on burn is, which sadly means he works very well with Arn. Aside from being a magical powerhouse, Arn finally gets to show her whip skills in Strikers. Arn's whip is one of her most unique aspects. It gives her basic combos a very wide range, even though her strength isn't that high. Unlike in the base game, you will want to make sure you're upgrading everybody's physical weapons as you progress, because obviously you'll be using normal attacks in Strikers a lot. But her normal attacks are even more interesting because her neutral special adds fire elements to them. This makes Arn great for taking down the shield gauges of anything weak to fire without spending any SP. Pressing special again while her whip is already on fire will have her do a long, wide-range wall of fire attack, but remove the fire. Arn's gun is also incredibly good in Strikers. It doesn't have a ton of range, but it hits in a very wide area and has a lot of ammo, and that's great for crowd control, which you obviously want in a game like this. But additionally, her machine gun is absolutely ridiculous for both damage and shield gauge breaking against single targets that are weak to guns. It also has a second firing mode that you can trigger by following the button prompts at the bottom of the screen. This has longer range but a shorter area and seems to fire a bit slower too. Arn's learn set is about what you'd expect. She does get some healing, but it's only single target. Her main focus is fire-based damage, attack debuffs, although with Master Art you can do this for free. And fire boost. However, there was a change in her skill set from the original P5 that I think is for the worse. She swapped out her sleep skills for charm skills. Yes, that fits Carmen more, but sleep is a far more useful status for technicals. Unless Haru is also in the party, Arn doesn't get anything out of charm. Except maybe one thing. Soul Thief. Now this is a good new addition to her skill set, and in fact, it's actually one of the better skills to give Joker's personas. Every time you attack an enemy with an ailment, you recover a bit of SP. This works both with Charm and Burn, and you'll be seeing a lot of Burn when Arn's in action. And this will help fuel Arn's fire-based skills for even more damage. My only other gripe about Arn is she doesn't get Burn Boost until level 50, which is pretty late for that. but she is one of the only members to learn a severe damaging skill naturally. But in general, Arn is interesting. She's not only a magical powerhouse, she also whips things with fire. You might have noticed Arn's resistances here. A really bizarre thing about strikers is that Morgana, Arn, and Makoto all keep their second tier Persona's resistances from the original Persona 5, but none of the other party members do. I have no idea why it's these three specifically. The Phantom Thieves Master Artist is back to paint the jails red with shadow blood. Anyway, the transition from turn-based to action was a bit of a discard and draw for Yusuke. He loses his baton pass strengthened skills, but he gains the fact that agility determines critical hits now, letting him crit very often, along with having the best strength stat of the party in a game where basic physical attacks are obviously really important. And he has other tricks too. His normal moves hit in a fairly wide area for how fast they are, and his specials cover even more ground. Yusuke actually has two character gimmicks. The first is, for all his special combos, mashing the special button will create an extended area attack, though it will leave Yusuke completely stationary. An important note about Yusuke's mashed third special though, that's 3 normal attacks and mash the special button. All of these slashes are ice elements, not just the bufu at the end. Great for shredding through shield gauges of anything weak to ice. His second gimmick is pressing special on its own, which has him enter a counter state. If nothing attacks him, he'll eventually unleash an Iai Jutsu slashing attack in an area, but if something does hit him, he'll immediately counter, taking no damage from the attack either. This counter gets even better as you unlock Yusuke's Master Arts, and making good use of it with the correct timing is vital to using him well. You might notice that after every string of normal attacks, Yusuke does this little flourish where he sheathes his sword. Don't worry, this animation can be cancelled by any attack button or dodge, so it does not leave him vulnerable. Yusuke's gun is also pretty decent, having good accuracy and range, and even more range if you switch to its secondary fire mode with the special button, something that I did not learn until making this bio. In terms of skills, he learns ice spells, which is great because frozen enemies take technical from physical. He learns a decent number of physical attacks to take advantage of this. Some good passives like freeze boost to increase the chances of freeze, and the new knockdown style, meaning his critical hits harm the enemy's down gauge even more. Tsukukaja to buff the party's critical and auto-evade rate. And speaking of auto-evade, he gets both dodge and evade fire. Replace dodge with evade because these don't stack. At higher levels, he also learns the very interesting option of taunt. This helps you if Haru is in the party, but it also lowers the enemy's defense, letting him deal even more damage. Something to note about Tsukukaja though, once you unlock his Master Art, Yusuke can cast this for free. Overall, Yusuke is a monstrous physical attacker with great area coverage, freeze for technicals, and a high critical rate. Ever played Persona 5 and thought, man, it would be cool if we could actually ride Johanna in gameplay? Well, now you can, sort of. First though, Makoto's standard combos consist of very rapid punches. They don't have a ton of range, but the combos go on for a while. She's one of the few to have a 6-hit combo. This gives her an unconventional weakness, well, if you're me. Her attack strings are so short and quick that she requires very different timing for her special combos than every other character, and I often find myself using the wrong ones. Among all these, her 4th special combo is notable because it lets her ride Johanna for a few seconds under your full control as you plow through enemies. It can also be used for field traversal, but you'll have to reactivate it every few moments, so it's a bit too much hassle. Her neutral special is a little disappointing as it's kind of a carbon copy of Arn's. It adds the nuclear element to her normal attacks. great against enemies that are weak to it, especially those with shield gauges, but terrible if the enemy resists nuke or worse, drains it. And Makoto has yet another unconventional weakness here. Once you unlock her Master Arts, she will automatically apply this state in some circumstances, which can be a detriment against the aforementioned null or drain nuke enemies. Important note, Makoto's special also adds nuclear element to her gun. Good against enemies weak to it, while also letting her slightly damage enemies that are otherwise immune to guns. The main issue is her gun has very limited ammo. Moveset wise, Makoto is still a jack of all trades, hitting hard with nuclear magic attacks, also technical and physical ailments, though that's less reliable than in Royal due to her lack of a persona trait here. Having full party healing, defense buffs, which are particularly good in strikers because they also make you more resistant to flinching, meaning it's harder for enemies to knock you out of attacks or combos. And while Makoto's physical attacks never get especially strong, they are the only party access to Dizzy outside of Joker, and Dizzy is an excellent status ailment. The problem is, Makoto is a bit unreliable in applying it. I'd still recommend keeping Flash Bomb though. At higher levels, Nuke Boost and Amp, Atomic Flare for severe damage, and full party healing. Oh, and her gun is very accurate and good for getting into fights from a distance. I personally don't find Makoto as useful as she was in the base game, but she's still a very fun character to use, especially against nuke weak enemies, if you can stand having to relearn combo muscle memory. Where do I even begin with Haru? Firstly, she specializes in Psi and gun attacks, like she did in the original. But is it just me, or did her agility get better since then? She certainly shows in her basic combos, and she doesn't have many of them, only going up to 4 hits. They cover a wide area, but it's her specials where they get more interesting. If you hold down the special button, she'll do a continuous attack. The second and third specials are the most notable. The third lets you control her as she does a massive axe spin attack, and the second creates a Psi tornado that absolutely shreds the shield gauges of anything weak to it. And it's also great for crowd control. Speaking of which, her grenade launcher hits in a massive area, and her neutral special has her go full-on fortress mode and have Milady unload with that thing. Once you unlock her Master Arts, this doesn't consume ammunition. And I haven't even mentioned her skill set yet. She's the only party member to learn HP-based gun skills, and her Psi attacks deal technical damage against any mental ailments, except for Get because base Persona 5 logic. And unlike the base game, Haru learns more skills to take advantage of technicals. Firstly, technical adepts so they do even more damage, and secondly, hysterical slap giving her access to inflicting rage. Not only is rage a mental ailment, but it also lowers the enemy's defense, making them take insane damage from her Psi skills and her second special. And bear in mind, this stacks with Psi weak enemies. She does get Evil Touch and Evil Smile, but I prefer to keep Hysterical Slap on her all game. Even if its rage chance isn't super reliable, even one activation leads to massive follow-ups. At higher levels, she even gets Ailment Boost. She also gets some support skills like Umbrita Shower and Heat Riser. As well as Gun Boost and Amp, interestingly, she does not learn Psi Amp in Strikers. With all that technical damage though, does she really need it? Her only weakness is you'll need to be careful when using her extended specials, because she is vulnerable and can be hit out of them. Futaba Sakura is our navigator once again, and she'll be with us and leveling up for the entire game. But as you can see here, she'll also be occasionally joining the Phantom Thieves in the field to hack terminals. And this means that Futaba's HP and defensive stats actually matter in Strikers, as does her equipment, though again, only the defensive aspects. Don't worry about buying her stuff, you'll get enough Futaba exclusive equipment through quests and chests to keep her covered. Futaba automatically analyzes the weaknesses of any enemies that you target with a persona attack, and as she levels up, she gains moral support to restore HP, SP, or give random buffs, active support to give a chance of charge or raising the showtime gauge, and in higher levels, these upgrade. Moral support has a greater chance of activating, and active support just raises the showtime gauge more because it's not like you can get more charged or concentrated. Fittingly, her final skill is Final Guard, which works pretty much the same way it did in the original Persona 5. If party members would take a fatal attack, there's a chance for Futaba to nullify it. At level 53, you should probably be getting this around the third to last dungeon, maybe second to last, so you don't have this for that long, but it can help. And really, there's no downsides to Futaba since she's always active in the party for no cost. It's just cool to have a Persona game where the navigator's stats actually matter. As foretold by opening movie spoilers, Zenkichi has finally joined the Phantom Thieves. Statistically, he has the highest HP of the party, and specializes in strength and endurance, with average to mid stats elsewhere. He has no weaknesses, but no elemental resistances either. And his specialty is physical, gun, and almighty attacks, along with buffs and debuffs, and some defensive skills. But his actual moveset is complicated. He's a great sword user, attacking fairly slowly but covering a semi-decent area. His first special can be charged, while his second and third combos can be extended, though weirdly the second requires you to hold the special button while the third requires you to mash it. His gun is accurate and has a lot of ammo, but is fairly weak. It can also be charged for an all-around spread shot, great for crowd control. It also does something else that plays into his other major gimmick, Fury. Zenkichi's special button, along with his special air combo for some reason, activates Fury. In this state, Zenkichi loses health every few seconds, but does increase damage and gets sword beams on all his basic attacks, giving him a lot of crowd control power. However, out of Fury, some of his attacks can drain health from enemies, including his guns. As his initial tutorial tells you, playing as Zenkichi is all about balancing when to use Fury and when to switch off of it to heal. And his Fury will get even better as you unlock his Master Arts. Onto his skill set, an important thing to note is that Zenkichi always joins the party at the same level as Joker, which means he'll likely start ahead of everyone else. He starts out with every single target buff, Megado, Triple Down, and Gun Boost, though unfortunately he never learns Gun Amp, so Haru is still the best gun user. He then gets Technical High, still should be Critical High, Dekaja, Enduring Soul. Now this is interesting, not only is it a great skill for his defensive build, and provides a lifeline if you go too ham with Fury, but Zenkichi is also the only non-protagonist character in a Persona game to ever learn this skill, fun fact. He then gets Heat Riser, which essentially replaces his starting 3 buffs, Deathbound for some physical damage, and at higher levels, upgrades to his almighty abilities, Debilitate, that is really good, though you'll likely get it right before the final boss. Firm Stance, also very interesting, because in Strikers this only stops auto-evade from triggering. You can still manually dodge enemy attacks. And finally, Agniastra for physical, though I find his basic attacks under Fury are much better. Zenkichi is an all-round great party member for all situations, his Fury giving him a lot of power at a price, and he becomes even better once he gets Debilitate and Enduring Soul. And the really cool thing about Zenkichi, on New Game Plus, you get to use him from the beginning in Alice's jail. Being a Persona user now, Zenkichi's got himself an Arcana, and this is one we haven't seen before. The Apostle or Priest Arcana is an alternate version of the Hierophant Arcana used in Aleister Crowley's Thoth deck, the same deck Aeon comes from. It shares the same symbolism as the original Hierophant: mentorship, authority, and obedience to the rules. Upright Hierophant characters in the Persona series are typically older than the protagonist and act as mentor figures or positive role models. But the original Hierophant arcana specifically refers to the Catholic Pope, while Aleister Crowley's version depicts a pagan priest. The term used for this arcana in Japanese originally referred specifically to Shinto priests, which may relate to the shrine Zenkichi awakens in, but it now refers to priests of any faith. And his persona is Jean Valjean, the protagonist of Victor Hugo's novel Les Miserables. Yes, the same person who wrote Hunchback of Notre Dame, and adapted into a famous musical in 1980. Valjean served a 19-year-long prison sentence for stealing bread to feed his sister's starving children, and even after his freedom, received a yellow passport, forever branding him as an ex-convict. He ends up stealing silverware from a priest, but when questioned by the police, the priest tells them that he gave that silverware to Valjean as a gift, and this inspires him to turn his life around. He becomes a father figure to Cosette, who's lost her mother, and ends up becoming mayor of an entire town, revolutionizing its industry, earning a lot of money, and spending it for the greater good of the people. That is until he finds out that another man has been arrested and put on trial, mistaken for being him. Now Valjean has a choice. He has a comfortable life, he's helping people, and he has a family that he's taking care of. And all he needs to do to keep that is let an innocent person be convicted in his place. Which he ultimately decides he can't do. He goes to the trial and gives himself up. Zenkichi recently faced a similar choice. He could have kept his position and lived comfortably if he'd let the Phantom Thieves take the fall, but he decided to sacrifice his livelihood to save them, knowing they were innocent. Valjean is well known for his opposition to antagonist Inspector Javert, a ruthless follower of the law who only sees Valjean as the criminal he once was, not the person that he is and became. Pandora, whose name means either all gifted or all giving, was the first woman according to Greek mythology as told by Hesiod. First appearing in his work Theogony, she was created by Hephaestus under orders from Zeus, after humans stole the gift of fire from Prometheus. Pandora was meant to be a beautiful embodiment of evil and humanity's punishment for this theft, whose descendants would continue to torment the human race for all time. From this alone you can tell that Hesiod was a raging misogynist. The myth would be expanded on in his poem Works and Days, which was the first appearance of the infamous Pandora's box, or rather, Pithos, a jar. Yes, Sophia's initial persona is meant to represent Pandora's vessel. It only became a box due to a mistranslation in the 16th century. Pandora's Pithos contained all the evils of the world, and she released it upon Prometheus' brother Epimetheus. But by the will of Zeus, one thing remained in the jar: hope. Sophia's new persona represents her as an artificial woman created by an artificer, and a bringer of hope against all the evils unleashed on the world by Emma. Which is also her arcana. Yes, Sophia has one now, and it's the Hope Arcana, coming from the same Visconti Sforza tarot deck as the Faith Arcana from Persona 5 Royal. It's said to represent hope, optimism, and positivity when upright, and despair, false hope, negativity, and pessimism when reversed. Perhaps Emma itself represents the reversed Hope Arcana. The Visconti Sforza deck is the oldest surviving tarot deck in the world, and it contained 3 cards representing the 3 Christian theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity. Looking into it, in this context, hope seems to represent hope for divine salvation and life everlasting, and is opposite to the sin of despair, which is a variant of sloth, fitting with Sophia opposing the re-emergence of the Memento's deaths. In gameplay terms, awakening to Pandora gives Sophia access to the last of her movesets, including Summer Akar, Medea Rahan, Angelic Grace, and she'll immediately learn Makoto upon evolution. She also gets Rebel's Soul with Pandora, but depending on what level Sophia was during this awakening, you might need to relearn that from the stats screen. There's no real fanfare that this skill exists, but she does have it now. And you'll probably want to equip it if you missed it. Her Bless resistance also turns into an immunity.